Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the 8th annual SLO Symposium. Thank you very much for joining us for the plenary session. Yesterday's day, with some technical difficulties, went very well. We've been receiving really some good supportive emails, so thank you very much. Again, kudos to the team. Kudos to everyone who helped us make this event happen. Fresno City College and others really appreciate your help. With that, I would like to turn it over to Stacy, who is going to talk about the logistics, and later I'll be here to introduce the plenary speaker. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Stacy Teeters, and I am one of the co-coordinators for the symposium this year, along with Jarek, who has been the symposium creator and been holding the torch for many years as well. I am a regional coordinator in the San Diego Imperial region and serve the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We are also joined by our wonderful co-host for this year from Fresno City College, Enrique. Enrique, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
On behalf of Fresno City College, faculty, staff, and administration, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Enrique Jauregui. I am the SLO coordinator for this wonderful institution. Our priority is to place students first to ensure the lifelike learning needs of our diverse population. Once again, welcome. Now, it is a great honor to recognize and thank the planning committee who contributed to the 8th annual SLO Symposium. Diligence and perseverance to have this first Zoom SLO Symposium. My gratitude also extends to the incredible Fresno City College faculty, classified professionals, staff that helped make this event happen. Thank you all. Of course, none of this would have been possible with the support received from our symposium sponsors. Listed here are the institutions and organizations that collaborated to bring this event all to you. On this second day, we wish you a notable and meaningful SLO Symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. So just some quick housekeeping for the day. As yesterday as well, we encourage you to be active on social media, on our various social media platforms, utilizing the symposium hashtags, hashtag SLO Symposium 2021, as well as our conference theme hashtag of ensure equitable learning. We also have these outcomes as a reminder from yesterday. We really hope you are engaging in these conversations, you are able to take this into practice, but you're also building networks of support as well through this event and through other events that the SLO Symposium group plans to put on again throughout the year. Wanted to also provide you with a quick overview of today's agenda. We'll also post again the program in the chat for you to view. Of course, starting with our keynote speaker, Dr. Davis Jenkins. We'll also be spreading out breaks throughout the morning as well. So we'll keep you refreshed and ready to keep learning and continue learning. At 10:15, we'll be beginning our panel with our 3 wonderful guest speakers, and then move into an intersegmental conversation. And then we hope you stick around to the end, because that is really where we get to have that community conversation and dialogue about what this work means, how we move forward, and how we continue to support one another. So with that said, I'll kick it back to Jarek.
All right, good morning again. Thank you very much. My name is Jarek Janio. I'm the SLO coordinator from Santa Ana College. And this morning I have the pleasure to introduce our plenary speaker for the day, Dr. Davis Jenkins, one of the authors of Redesigning America's Community Colleges book that brought us guided pathways. By now, we all have experienced the impact of the initiative at community colleges in California and across the country. Higher education institutions, mindful of the cafeteria model of course selection fostered for decades, put significant resources into onboarding, counseling, and making sure that students leave our institutions because of intentional focus on completion of specific courses and predetermined programs. In the midst of these activities, the fourth pillar of guided pathways, however, seems to have been missed. Meetings focused on accountability on our campuses are filled with very well articulated reasons why our students are not progressing through programs, why they are not completing colleges at expected rates, or why they failed the courses. None of those reasons seem to have anything to do with learning. While learning on our campuses can be implied, it is often inferred, and it remains mostly invisible, as expressed by one of the symposium panelists just yesterday. Guided pathways have not resulted in discussions about critical pedagogy, active learning, or understanding by design. Instead, whatever happens in classrooms is, as it always has been, veiled with a notion of academic freedom, which really means that support for teaching and learning cannot match the resources, energy, and focus owned by admissions and records, outreach, or counseling. Makes you think. If community colleges are not about teaching and learning, then what are they about? So here's a radical idea to address that. I heard this during one of our SLO discussions we've been having on Fridays since the pandemic hit. What if guided pathways started with ensuring learning and institutions were restructured around teaching and learning? Back in October of 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, Community College Research Center published a report, The Economics of Guided Pathways, Cost, Funding, and Value. The report was issued to help community college leaders understand the costs involved in implementing guided pathways and develop plans for funding and sustaining them. And just like people close to the fourth pillar of guided pathways have been saying all along, ensuring learning is not at scale at any of the colleges participating in the study. Dr. Jenkins, here's the challenge for you. Would you please put these notions in a perspective from your perspective? Would you please let us know what just happened and why learning has been so largely absent from these efforts? More importantly, what are we to do now? Where are the beacons of hope for teaching and learning to be validated on our campuses? With that, Dr. Jenkins, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here, Yark. I wish I were with you guys in California. I'm in sunny Chicago, where it's like 22 degrees. And I can always rely on my friend Yark for giving me these softball questions. You know, I could just hit this one out of the park. It's so easy. But as always, this guy hits right to the heart of the issue. And we have been learning this ourselves. I mean, if Pillar 4 is so essential to achieving equitable student success, why is so little effort being put into it? So I'm just going to give a little bit of overview of what we've learned a lot since we published Redesigning America's Community Colleges, and give you a sense of what we've learned in the process. And, you know, this is humbling. We've learned this from you folks, and it's been a journey. I want to frame this by saying that despite what people say, education and learning have never been more valuable. This is the measures of the economic value, and we know that education has more than just economic value, but you need to have economic security before you can advance socially and move up, support social as well as economic mobility. But this shows the number of workers in the U.S. in good jobs by their education level, and you see this straight line moving up, a little bit of a flattening during the Great Recession. Among workers in good jobs, that's defined as 35 grand per year for younger workers. And these jobs typically pay benefits and provide opportunities for learning and advancement, formally and informally. But the blue line is good jobs, the number of good jobs held by workers with bachelor's degrees. And the red line is those held by workers with certificates or associate degrees. And 80% of those are applied associate degrees, like in nursing or business technology or engineering tech. And the yellow line is the number of good jobs held by people with just a high school diplomas. Now, so employers for looking at good jobs are looking for degrees, but they're also looking for, and it's hard to know what to call them. I know this alone is I'm talking to SLO people. I should have been up on they're sometimes called 21st century learning skills. I call them know-how. I've been in this business, the 21st century skills. During the Clinton thing, I helped to write the Secretary of Labor's scans report about these applied learning skills. And anyhow, the key thing about these skills is that they really can only be learned by active and experiential learning. Of course, I think anything only can be learned, but the left-hand figure is, how much these different competencies are in demand. And the right one is even more important. What's the economic premium associated with jobs that demand these things? And look at them. And this is the number one always is, and this is very solid research, by the way, and there's other research that's come out recently that's very rigorous. Communication is always number one. Problem solving and complex thinking, always number two. So I'm trying to say, I'm not knocking skills training, but if people are telling you that people can get a job, some 2-week Google training and then get a good job, and work at Google, they're wrong. It's a lie. That's not saying that skills training, but on the other hand, we can't just have generic academic degrees that don't have active learning. So what employers are really looking at for is degrees plus evidence that you can learn skills. And you can do these things, which really the evidence comes from project learning. And that, can be in the workplace, but it also can be in school, in theater, in a history project that is substantive, in, the kinds of work that you can do in a English class. But it's got to be project learning that emphasizes these things. Students don't like doing this stuff. They're used to just getting the multiple choice and, churning through. But, anyhow, I'll go more on this in terms of equity. But, our labor force is highly stratified by education. And indeed, I could go on, but our education system is essentially set up to stratify by race and income. It is by design. And community colleges aren't intentionally in this process, but they have evolved to do this. And one way is that community colleges, even though they serve the largest number of Latinx students and Native American students and the largest share by far of low-income students, they're the least resourced. So precisely because you serve brown students and low-income, you're low resourced. And that's part of the reason why, the outcomes aren't so good. Only 41% of students overall achieve any kind of degree, certificate, associate, or bachelor's in 6 years. And remember that first graph about the bachelor's and higher or the applied associate. Only 10% of African-American students who started community college get a bachelor's 6 years later. Here are the numbers nationally, and here's California. California, whereas 41% of students get some degree within 6 years nationally, in California, community college starters 6 years later, only 36% have a degree. And that's 18% have a bachelor's degree. But here's the big thing. 23% are still enrolled 6 years later. So first of all, I want to hire those students. Those students have grit. And, yes, students are going part-time and blah, 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 but we can go all in this. There's no reason we shouldn't help students, because that's just too long to get a credential, a meaningful credential within 6 years. It's just too long to be in poverty. But this belies the fact that students don't have grit. So of the certificates that California awards each year, only 21% are associated with, good jobs that pay 35 to 40,000 median salary up. I am not knocking certificates. I'm just, and skills training. I've spent much of my career working in the CTE area. And the point is here, we can't have CTE and academic. We got to work together. Students need skills as well as, broad thinking that you can learn both through CTE and through academics. And they need degrees, especially bachelor's degrees, and every bachelor's degree, even in career areas, has a liberal arts and sciences component for good reason. Similarly, only 19% of the associate degrees awarded by California community colleges are in these higher, direct return. And these are the applied associate degrees in healthcare, in protective services, in fire and police, because those jobs are unionized, and business technology. My wife has an associate degree from Bunker Hill Community College in business tech. It's a very good degree. Now, of course, it's true that most of the associates you give are transfer degrees, but transfer degrees only are valuable to students if they're able to transfer with junior standing in a major. And nationally, just about, only about less than 60% of students are able to transfer most of their credits. 15% cannot do that at all. And those that can transfer most of their credits toward their major, not transfer it and 90 credits and then start as a sophomore, first year term sophomore in their major, are much more likely to complete. And California's got an excess credit problem. This is from your own dashboard, your lunch board. The average number of units accumulated by associate degree is over 90, even for the let's see. Yeah. So this is for all associate earners, associate degree for transfer earners are the blue, the little bit better, but it's still crazy. So on average, and remember in California, it's community colleges that are serving the largest share of students of color and low income students who need bachelor's degrees or, applied associates. And yet we're turning them out here with, on average, 90 credits, a whole, they should be starting as seniors in their major, but they're not. So, these kind of things led us to this, this idea of the Cafeteria College. The program paths to degrees are not clear. New students aren't helped to explore interests and develop a plan. Students' progress isn't monitored, and then learning, too few students experience active and experiential learning. So we've been, this led to this guided pathways idea and these 4 pillars, which I know you're sick of hearing me say, and Yark gave my email. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate email for these 4 pillars. But you're familiar with these ideas here. We've been about 400 colleges nationally are part of formal guided pathways efforts. That doesn't mean they have fully implemented guided pathways. I'd say we'd say conservatively the number nationally is probably 70, and of those are the ones who are really starting to get into the learning, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we've been tracking 120 colleges nationally over 5 years implementing guided pathways, and this includes AACC colleges, AACC pathways, and all the colleges in Tennessee, Ohio, Washington, and 20 in California that were part of the California Guided Pathways project. And this has led us to some learning, our learning outcomes here. In the book, we focused on college completion, and there's been big focus on college completion, but it's very clear, become more and more clear that that the goal can't be just to churn out more students with associate degrees or degrees. It's got to be degrees that have value either in terms of direct employment and preparation for further education and learning. So they have to be high value. And this is the equity question because unfortunately, students of color, low-income students, disproportionately, when they do earn it, earn the low return programs. And we've made this a big focus. This is a big equity issue. We made a lot of deal about maps, and I'm sorry, you know, the mapping. I think a lot of colleges got hung up on maps. And, you know, we're academics, you know, what did we know? It's just a book. You weren't supposed to, it was supposed to sit on a shelf and collect dust. And maps are actually important, and they've been important mostly to bring people in the college who don't talk to one another across to talk about the student experience, including and especially the learning experience. But the whole goal is not just to develop all these maps, it's to have every student have a customized plan that they can follow so that they can see how far they go, but so that they can see the coherence of their education and why the liberal arts piece of it fit in here and where this leads. Number three, you know, we made a big deal about, and we've seen a lot of colleges really up career and college exploration for students, but more and more, it's not just, you know, the Career Center or, you know, orientation, more and more, the research suggests that what's most important is connecting students with other people in a field they're interested in. I'm not just talking about a career field. I'm talking about the theater people, the students who are interested in drones. I mean, we know the healthcare people. They're wearing their uniforms, and they're not a cult, but they're a community. You know, the research suggests that it's all about engagement, and in a community college, that's Vince Tinto, of course, but he was talking about students at Syracuse University, an elite residential. At a community colleges, students are going to be engaged in the classroom and in programs. There's been a big focus on remediation. I actually helped, you know, some of my research around 2008 and 9 started to question remediation. And then I started looking, well, what about other courses? Anatomy and Physiology, American Civilization, Econ 101, Psych 101 actually are just as determinative as English and math. And this is maybe the most dramatic thing where, you know, the idea shouldn't be to get students ready for college through running through high school over again, the two courses they hated most, but it's to teach students to be confident learners in program foundations, not just math and English. And I know you guys, these SLO people are like, I'm preaching to the choir here. And, you know, especially in California, but everywhere, you know, dual enrollment has just sort of been like students taking courses and, you know, it's up to the student or the high school or whatever is available. But really, we just came out with a study from Aspen looking at dual enrollment as an equity play. And basically what this means is applying these principles to dual enrollment students too, not just to your post-high school entrance. So 5 years later, these are the things we think are most important. Backward designing programs so that they lead to good jobs or transfer in a major. Increasing the number of Black males in California who get associate degrees is not going to achieve equity unless those associate degrees enable students to get good jobs or transfer in a major of the student's interest. And I'm not just saying in STEM or business. I mean, ethnic studies, liberal arts, I don't care. But it's got to be what the students are interested. Those have value. Academic and career exploration needs to lead to a plan that the students have. I know you guys are legislated to have plans, but they're really, you know, kind of weenie. And I just don't see that we can take students' money or the taxpayers' money anymore and not have a full program plan, which will change. But, you know, for students with families, and then to guarantee we offer those courses on the plan. So there's been a lot of attention to these two things, the two most important things in general for student success. And I would say, and this is humbling, that the work on the first two things has really been doing away with stuff we shouldn't have been doing in the first place, like prerequisite dev ed, or doing stuff we should have done, like every student on a real plan. But these other things, so in other words, we're sort of where we are in student achievement, where we would have been without this other stuff. But the real important things, if we're really going to boost learning and close equity gaps, these are the bottom two things: academic and career communities, connecting students with faculty, other students, other people, employers, people in the community, in an academic and career community. This, again, is not just all about careers. It's about, people are into, social and behavioral sciences, my field. And then very importantly, the research is definitive, much of it coming from K-12, but there's more and more in higher ed, that we really have to ensure that students have an active and learning experience from the start. They have to have a light the fire learning experience from the start. I'll talk about that in a minute. Like I said, there's lots of research from K-12 on the benefit for underserved students of active and experiential learning. Hank Levin, my colleague at Teachers College, who was at Stanford for many years, developed the essential skills. He used to say, don't remediate, accelerate. And by accelerate, he did not mean co-requisite, where you take the remediation and put it up here next to the college level course. He meant teach underserved students from underserved communities and schools to high standards of rigor, but most importantly, make them think. And there has been a lot of research in higher education in the STEM field that really reinforces this. Most of it has been in four-year institutions. And this book here, which is, in my view, the most important research on guided pathways that's come out, in the last 5 years, by Julie Wong, a colleague at University of, so this isn't from CCRC, from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And she looked at students who start in a community college intending to transfer in STEM. This is something we look at a lot, and very few students are able to start at community college and go to STEM. And her research, which not only looks at student progression, which is what a lot of my and CCRC's research does, she actually measures through very rigorous surveys their experience in classrooms and their social capital outside of class and other factors, not just sort of their characteristics and their progression and what they're taking, which is important. That's sort of what CCRC has done. And what she finds is that, yes, students the path to STEM transfer is incredibly unclear. And she is especially focused on students of color and low-income students. But in general, these students are trapped up because the paths are unclear. No one's helping them get a plan. But and most importantly, and they're not being engaged with other students who are interested in STEM early on. But the factor that she finds most important for those students who started community college to get a bachelor's degree in STEM is early active learning. And not only does it help that students pass courses, but the experience of active learning enables them and motivates them to be retained and persist in STEM programs, which are hard programs. The big problem is with STEM is that, a proportionate number of minority students enter STEM programs, but they don't complete. They drop out. And Julie's finding, reinforcing research, the best research on cognitive science and learning from higher ed and the massive amount from K-12. Yes, plans are important. Yes, scheduling is important. These things that have been the focus of guided pathways. But if you really want to improve learning, you want to improve equity, and you want to retain students, you got to have a light the fire learning experience in term one. The problem she finds is that most of these students are finding active learning mainly in CTE courses, and that's fine. I'm not knocking CTE, but those CTE courses do not transfer to bachelor's degrees in STEM. So I could talk about a study we did for Google that comes to similar conclusions. A lot of these students think they can transfer, this was in California, transfer to CSUs, but they're taking CTE information technology courses, and no one's telling them this. And yet they have to go through several levels to get to the transfer level STEM courses that they would need to take to transfer in, say, computer science. She fundamentally rejects, as do I, that these students don't have grit. We cannot blame the student for this. These students, my buddy Diego Navarro, many of you know him, he fundamentally rejects that the most disadvantaged students don't have grit, man. They're showing up in your class and they're dealing with hell. I know we all are, but they've come through a lot. But, we need to come through with them on these more bureaucratic things, let's say structural things, but especially on learning. And this is the key equity play. The problem is, and everyone says, yeah, but when you look at the first term courses, take a look at the courses your students take during their first term. This was from a particular college, but Kathy Booth did this recently of Wested in California. And what we have here is very typical. Dev Ed algebra, now it's co-req. English comp, sometimes co-req. A college experience course. And in California, the third one is physical fitness. And, that's a hard course, so I'm not knocking that. It's not just the content of these courses. So we're not saying humanities courses or a really well-taught Psych 101 or Social 101 course, which, that speak to the lives of our students. And we're not saying, the kinds of courses students need to transfer in STEM. So the question is, what are they taking? And what are they taking? And just as importantly, how well is it taught? In community colleges in the rest of the country lose 40% of their students after essentially 1 or 2 terms. And the majority of students of color and low-income students. In California, it's a little different. You lose a lot of students, probably around 30% of students, disproportionately students of color and low income. But students stay on, as you saw, 23% still enrolled. Those are national numbers, so they're comparable. Anyhow, but even so, even if they do stick around, to get the momentum, as Julie Wong has found, in a field of interest, and again, this doesn't have to be a career field. I mean, a well-taught, my life was transformed by a well-taught humanities course. The Sociology of Religion by Robert Wuthnow, a great scholar who this was in the 70s, who foresaw the rise of the religious right. This was in the 70s. And he also taught me statistics, even though I'd taken calculus and blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, enough of me. Co-req is not a silver bullet. And I'm not even sure how much of a solution it is. This is, there have been a lot of important experimental studies, but one problem with the experimental studies is that they, have very small numbers of students. This is a causal evaluation, a quasi-experimental evaluation of co-req implemented at scale by all 13 Tennessee community colleges, involving 80,000 students in this database. And I'm not going to go through the details, but basically, and I'm focusing on math, but the same as interest, they broke students into math pathways depending upon their field of interest, and they provided learning support in different ways. And they got good outcomes, but these are just good descriptive students. More and more students were passing college level math and English. But the question is, was this a causal effect? And I'll just cut to the chase. The main takeaway was the co-req model works as a model in enabling students to take and pass college math and English in 1 year and actually succeed in the second math and English sequence courses. But the main reason it does that is not the learning support so much, but because you're helping students avoid prerequisite. So it's not so much that co-requisite helps. The academic support doesn't hurt, and it helps a little, but the main benefit is getting them the hell out of Dev Ed, prerequisite Dev Ed. Sorry, don't translate hell. Getting them the heck out of Dev Ed. Thank you, Ashley. And for math, the main benefit comes from moving more students. This is the first term math taking by students in the Tennessee colleges. In 2010, the majority were taking algebra, usually Dev Ed to start. And now almost 2/3 are taking stats because they're in nursing or criminal justice, and then 15% are taking liberal arts or tech math, depending upon their fields. So this, taking a more relevant math, rather than the algebra that is appropriate for STEM, really helps to motivate students. So I mentioned that we're beginning to see among early adopters of this kind of work on learning, and most of it really is around the meta majors, the career and academic communities, because they really provide an opportunity, and most of it is focused on the foundation courses for those communities. So, healthcare is obviously bio, anatomy and physiology, the math courses, social and behavioral sciences would be statistics, psych, social, but to really make those courses, and first of all, ensure that students take them early on the first term, but make them really well taught, putting your best teachers in there. And this involves a lot of conversation among the general education faculty and other faculty. So, and I'll send this out and we can connect you with these folks, and it's really exciting work. I will say that this built on this other structural stuff, which is important. So bottom line, why, in our view, has been there so little focus on pillar 4? The changes required for the other 3 pillars are not, which create the infrastructure for academic career communities where we think that the improving learning, not just in the foundation courses, but throughout, really takes place best, because learning is different and you want to learn in context. It's writing across the curriculum, communication across the curriculum. But making those changes is formidable, and it takes time. Like, we estimate 4 years generally on average. Administrators, and I'm not knocking administrators, they want a quick fix, and they think they can, do it through these maps and other things. And the maps and things, these other structural things are important. And by the same token, we hear from faculty about academic freedom, but academic freedom is not freedom to teach. It's freedom from political influence. It's not freedom to teach, however you want, whatever you want. Not excuse to use outmoded curricula and teaching practices. And there's this entrenched mindset, even in community colleges, even among, we've learned that we're all racist. That the problem is that students aren't academically prepared. No, they can't take Soc 101 or advanced bio because they came from a crappy school. When in fact, the problem is not that students are lacking in academic skills. That's what they are, but that's why they're coming to you. The problem is that they have not experienced good teaching. That's the issue. And the poorer the student, the browner the student, the more likely they will have not experienced good teaching. So what do we do about this? We have to remind our colleagues that you want to see the movement in the needle, and they wonder why, despite all the mapping and stuff, they haven't seen movement in the needle. Well, you're not lighting the fire for learning in your students early on. And the other thing is, we all talk about equity and equitable, equity conscious teaching, which is really critical. But you know, the research from K-12 especially, and Julie Wang's research suggests that, you know, this has to be active learning on topics of interest to the students that will interest them. And again, it's not all career stuff. And your role, but this means for you guys, you SLO folks, you really got to rethink your role from just helping students assess SLO to helping faculty become effective teachers. And I know this varies by college, but these success teams, or these inquiry teams, as my friend Al Solano calls them, that have been created by field, we found are the best place to have these discussions. Because the idea is you want to get students from the start who are interested in your field, including and especially liberal arts. I'm a liberal arts person. We are not selling the liberal arts. And look at the first term courses. They're not taking liberal arts courses. They're dropping out, especially the students who, you know, that we want to increase equity for. You know, politically, there's, you know, guided pathways may go away with the, you know, when the funding ends, and some people I'm sure will breathe a sigh of relief. But the need of California to address equity through higher education won't. And these ADTs, I know this is just with the CSUs, have real value. The problem is it's white students and Asian students who are getting those, because the minority students and low income are not being counseled toward them, and they're not helped to start in the courses they need to transfer on an ADT. And this is not just a community college problem, although you guys have a great network there for learning. This is a CSU and UC-wide problem. I understand that you've got some CSU folks on who are really into teaching and learning. I think a powerful alliance between CSU faculty and other SLO people and community college faculty to take this back. I mean, you know, the bureaucratic stuff is important. The plans, I'm serious. It's unethical not to have plans, the scheduling, all that's important. But really, you know, as teachers, really stand up for this and saying, you want retention, you want equity in outcomes, this is the solution, and we need resources and support to do this. And I'll dust you off when you come back. You know, I'm here to dust you off.
All right, let me go ahead and spotlight. Thank you so much, Davis. This really helps to put things, I think, into perspective, and thanks for also acknowledging the folks on this call, on this attending this conference, right? They're not only SLO champions, but they have the ability to be learning leaders at their campuses.
This is what I'm saying.
Yep. So
and ally with the CSU
right?
folks too. The CSU, you got CSU's doing great work too, and I suspect, I don't know as much about CSU's. They're doing great learning work, focused on equity, focused on first term, you know, these foundation courses, and you guys together could really kick some.
Yeah, it's the pieces are there, right? It's how to get them connected and how to get people working together around the students and around equity. We have a lot of great activity, Davis, happening in the chat, happening in the Q&A, and Libby Curiel, one of the other symposium planners, and I will be helping to moderate the rest of the discussion this morning with you. So we did want to start though with asking you, because you have this nationwide perspective, according to the data, who is doing this ensure equitable learning work well in the nation? ideas to kind of exemplars that we could potentially look at and learn from as we start to engage in this work.
So I mentioned some on that slide, and we can connect you with those. This is usually colleges that have really implemented these other aspects of guided pathways, especially the meta majors, not just as a bureaucratic measure, but building academic and career communities. A good place to look, I think, for urban California colleges would be the Alamo colleges. They've done a lot of work on mapping transfer paths. They don't have one, a lot of talk about Valencia and some of, I'm not knocking, but they have big transfer partners. Alamo and San Antonio has a whole mess of them, just like most urban colleges in California have. They've mapped those out. They're building they have every student on a plan, and every student's on a meta major too. So they call them institutes. They're these fields. So actually, when the Alamo colleges, which serves 90,000 students a year, when they shut down because of COVID in March, between that time and the end of the term in May, they were able to reach out to do over a million personal contacts, not just from the college, but from, hi, Stacy, this is Davis from your Social and Behavioral Sciences Institute. How are you doing? We know that you're taking these courses with Professor such and such. I mean, to be honest, they're struggling, to get this stuff online. How are you doing? But it's your field calling you. And then when registration for summer and fall came along, they didn't have any problem because I have my plan for my social and behavioral sciences transfer to Texas State in social whatever justice. So I know what to register for, and they offer those courses in the summer because I'm not going to Europe, even if it's not code. And
Yeah, thank you.
Anyhow, but the fundamental thing is all that benefit. Their vice chancellor for learning said to me, look, this is all good, but it's not going to address the equity issues. Because we need to reach, having these maps and the plans benefits advantaged students. We need to actively reach out and help students. And then I talked to all the presidents all 5 presidents right before, and they're saying, yes, we need to reach out to low-income communities, but the big thing is learning, active learning. And so this is they're focused on equity and upward mobility, especially transfer degrees or AAS degrees. So that's an example. They're small colleges, Wallace State in Alabama, Tennessee, Cleveland State, that have started to focus on this. But it's really among these 70 to 80 we're seeing nationally that are starting on that.
Right.
I don't think you need to start to be that way in California. You guys could go in that.
Thank you so much for that answer. It's great to hear the national perspective, Dr. Jenkins. We have another question for you. In a world where SLO documentation is a paramount consideration for accreditation, and administrators sometimes are more concerned with compliance than the meaningful assessment of learning, as well as faculty fighting initiative fatigue, not to mention all the compounding stress.
No question.
Today.
I know.
How can colleges and states foster the conditions that will enable faculty to approach SLOs as a way to improve teaching and learning, rather than we did SLOs, we're ensuring learning.
I know. Check.
Our data collection, right?
Right. So it's really about creating these colleges that have really done this cultural change. The most important things are not the technical things they put in place, but the cultural understandings, like it's not the students lack skills. It's sure as hell that they're not lack skills in abstract algebra. The same course I took in 10th grade in 1974, same course. And I didn't learn algebra through that either. It's that students lack good teaching. And focusing on, as a community, what are our first term courses where we're going to light the fire for students? And it's not going to be, in nursing, it's not going to be a nursing course. And where the tough 101 courses that, Econ 101 for business, or Accounting 101, or, that we're really going to light the fire for we're going to light the fire for learning, and where are students going to need academic support, and as an academic community. But it's really it's a change in mindset to understand that students are going to be engaged and retained not through these bureaucratic things, and by putting it all on the counselors and the student services staff. They're fundamentally going to be retained by being in an academic and career community and getting good teaching. That's easy to say. And if anyone thinks I have a swelled head, I have a wife and 2 daughters. So, when I go home, I just got to, I'm a moron. But it's easy to say, but you have to really build the whole college around that. Yeah, this SLO thing is just a bunch of check boxes if you just look at it from an accreditation standpoint. On the other hand, colleges that have this culture and this work on teaching and learning have no problems, meeting accreditation. They just kick it out of the park, and their numbers are going up. Pierce College, Washington would be another one good to look at. We see a lot of this work being done in union colleges. People are saying you can't be done with the union. I'm like, no. If you engage the union from the start, you're actually better off than in non-union colleges. And they're really focused on light the fire learning that is really equitable. And they have made big investments in this as part of their, they've done the other stuff on the meta majors and the maps and the scheduling and the, blah, 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 which is important. But those should be focused on 2 things: connecting students to an academic career community and good teaching, especially in the foundation courses, and moving on.
All right. Next question here. Gonna summarize quickly.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip ahead. Lifelong learning allows students to pursue their talents on a continual development pathway, entering and exiting institutions to get to their next promotion, switch careers, etc. How can we get everyone to engage in lifelong learning?
You teach them to be confident learners. I know this sounds trite, but all the research in student success and in teaching and learning suggests that act the best thing you can do. If I had to choose between the whole structural guided pathways thing and a light the fire course or courses, I would choose the latter. But the problem is community colleges have such low resources. Faculty, full-time faculty teaching 5 courses, many of these courses taught by adjuncts. The guided pathways thing provides the structure for the communities and the plans, to help with scheduling and to help the student see where they are, all those good things. And in theory, at least, creates the time for the meaningful work, which is connecting and light the fire learning. And there's a lot of good resources on this nationally. My last slide, I think I missed was there's whoops, I guess it didn't work, but there's I look at the Eberly Center at Carnegie Mellon University. That's my alma mater, but or where I got my PhD. But they've got a really great site on teaching and learning. I'm sure you guys have some of that stuff, CSUs, but I think ally with CSUs to create sites like these. This is from my buddy Al Solano. He talks about the 5 E's, which was developed by NASA and WGBH. And then there's this thing developed by these psych people. The APA, American Psychological Association, came out with this essential tools and techniques for college teaching based on cognitive science and psychological science. There is a lot of good stuff for college teaching out there. The K-12 schools are actually 15, 20 years ahead of us. I mean, obviously they have issues implementing this stuff, but I think this coalition that we're talking about with this group, along with CSUs and others from privates, whoever's doing good work on teaching and learning, to adapt these kind of ideas for California has huge power.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think we have some really great chat going on and some questions that I think, there's this idea that the faculty, the onus is completely on them. They have to step up their game and they have to be better teachers. And then there's also not a lot of room sometimes to make that happen, or it's not facilitated by the institution. And so someone asked this question, are you suggesting equity really can't happen until we ensure equitable learning? And if that's the case,
absolutely,
then shouldn't colleges or systems approach Pillar 4 up front and center while one and three are on? You're like, yes.
Right, straight from
but, and this is very important, and it's not just arbitrary. You need to do it by academic field, because learning is best done contextually, and students have, and the writing you need for business is going to be different than social behavioral sciences, which is going to be different from history, or and again, obviously students don't know what they want right away, but the research is very definitive. It's in the process of exploration, of discovery. And so the idea with Guided Pathways was to build that process of discovery centered on the classroom. So yes, start with it, but start with inquiry teams by field. And look especially, I know I'd make a big thing about the first term, but that's where first of all, take a look at the courses. If you're in whatever field, take a look at your courses that your students are taking. And actually take a look at the courses who are into your program and what they've taken. You will be shocked. How did they get this advice? And it is not the counselors, and it's not the faculty. The other idea of Guided Pathways is, how do you provide this level of support for students that an elite, well-resourced, the UCs or privates have in an institution that is radically, I think, criminally underfunded, like a community college or a CSU. And the way to do it is to build community across the silos. So yes, start with learning, but please do it in as communities, and get your best teachers up there on the front line. The more scholastic teachers, which are not bad teachers, you want them in the 200 level courses, but you'll get more students, by which I mean sophomore level courses. You'll find more students get to those courses. And one thing I'll say, we talk about these pathways and these maps and stuff. I'll tell you, Guided Pathways will be a success if more students, underserved students, can get to a sophomore class and the professor said, Davis, you're good at this. Mm-hmm. Have you talked to Professor Teeters? She's an expert she teaches English, but she's an expert in, working on marketing for change management, making this up. I know you do that a lot. And by the way, are you planning to transfer? You should go to the UC, but we'll also apply. But you have to take these courses if you're going to apply to their org science bachelor's program. Or I know someone, she's looking, employer, she's got a startup, she's looking for an intern. I'll write you a letter. And they've made it through those 101 courses. after that, that is the goal of guided pathways right there. Who knows? And who knows what all these fields are going to change.
Yes.
So, but students do need to have a goal, to a direction to go toward, and they'll change. But once they get to that sophomore level course, connected and confident learners, and have a plan. They do need a plan. They're on their way.
Well, my goodness.
This is based on the research.
Yeah.
I'm not just, I know I'm not just sounding all woo-woo because I'm talking to a bunch of Californians. I'm in Chicago, man. I should be talking more. But this is based on the research. Check out this book. This is this is rigorous research. Based in community colleges, centered on the student experience, including in the classroom. Really good book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Davis, for joining us this morning and for helping to put things in perspective. I know we're running a little past 10 folks, but thank you. We still have a lot of questions as well in the chat and the Q&A, Dr. Jenkins. So I don't know if you might be willing to either answer them live today or answer them via the chat today, or connect with us a little bit later and we'll send out Q&A responses to the rest of the symposium group. But
yeah, that'd be good.
With that said, please go enjoy the break. We'll be reconvening at 10:15, but go refresh your minds because we got more to come. So thank you so much again to Davis Jenkins from CCRC, and we'll see everyone in a little bit.